Okay, good evening, all. Thank you for coming out on this cold winter-like evening, still a month till winter. It's my pleasure. Welcome to the November meeting of the Linnaean Society. My name is Peter Davenport, and I'm the acting president. And on behalf of the board, we welcome you and would like to call this meeting to order. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Jean-François J.F. Therrien from Quebec, and we've had a fantastic list of speakers over the past year, and tonight's talk promises to be another. But before we get to that, a few things that we should be aware of that are coming up. So just a really important note, normally our monthly meetings are on Tuesdays, the second Tuesday of the month, but next month it will be on a Monday, December 8th. We'll be meeting here, and we hope that as many of you as possible can join us in person as we sort of end the year at the Linnaean Society in New York. New members, we'd like to welcome 6 new members. And they are Matt Beck. And if you're in the audience, if you can stand up or just raise a hand, Matt Beck, Isaac Brooks, Michelle DeFeo, Giselle Mora, Lisa Schwartz, and Shelley Zhang. So if we can just give a welcome. And a reminder to our current members that to pay your dues. Unlike many organizations, we do not have recurring payments. And so every year the plea goes out, or rather the call goes out to renew your membership. Most of you have, but remember that the dues do help us rent the space, maintain our web presence, bring in fabulous speakers, and so much more. So thank you for those of you who are going to pay. Thank you. Debbie Becker is our newsletter editor, and she done a fantastic job, and she is looking for people who are interested in possibly submitting for the upcoming newsletter. So if you are interested, go to the Linnaean Society's website, and you will find her address information. You can reach out to any of us as well if you're interested in submitting. Lastly, we have a Hawk Watch scheduled for Friday, November 14th, and it'll be at the Belvedere Castle in Central Park. All are welcome. It starts, I believe, at noon, and will be led by Gabriel Willow. So please join us. There's a hope of seeing maybe some eagles, possibly cave swallows, who knows. So please join us. All right, and it's with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Dr. J.F. Therrien. He has a Ph.D. He studied snowy owls in the Arctic. It sounds like fascinating work, and he will hopefully tell one of his snowy owl stories, at least to the people who are here, an incentive for those of you at home to join us in person in the future. JF is a senior scientist and graduate studies director at Hawk Mountain, where many of you have been. He's also the scientific director at the Tadoussac Bird Observatory in Quebec. And that's what his talk's going to be about tonight. The title of the talk is Reverse Migration and the Extraordinary Events at Tadoussac in Quebec, Canada. And so if you would join me in welcoming J.F. Therrien.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for coming. Pleasure for me to be here. A pleasure for me to talk about any of these specific projects I've been involved with over the years. We were just talking at dinner about all sorts of things bird related, but obviously if talking about snowy owl is an easy topic for me to get going. I haven't included much in this talk because I was asked to talk about Tadoussac, but I'm happy to talk about snowy owls at some point in the future. As you heard, I'm working as a research scientist at Hawk Mountain, which is about 2 hours or 2.5 from the city. Here is straight west. If any of you wants to visit, we have fantastic programs as well. mostly year round, but the fall is typically where people like to be at Hawk Mountain. When you're standing on the rocks, you're where it used to be a shooting gallery for raptors. Raptors were considered vermins 100 years ago, until a lady from New York City, Rosalie Edge, bought the land, made a stop, and turned it into a sanctuary overnight. So from a shooting place, the next morning, it was a place where people had to pay 5 cents to get to see the hawks. And there was some opposition, but a lot of people congratulated her, and it became what is now a world-renowned place. Hawk Mountain leads several efforts in education and research, and it has a global reach that has spanned over the borders. One of them, smaller cousin, is the Tadoussac Bird Observatory. Growing up in Quebec City, not in Quebec City, but in Quebec province, I mean, of course, you hear my French accent, which won't go away, even though I've been in Pennsylvania for 15 years. It's still there. And I grew up in Quebec and did a lot of birding in Quebec and Pennsylvania and abroad. But Tadoussac is one of those less known place, but deserve to be visited. If I'm not convincing you with those slideshow, that's okay. But I'm trying to do a good pitch if you want to make a trip and see those northern birds. I'm gonna start by thanking the hundreds of volunteers, staff, financial partners, sponsors that help these projects going on. I mean, without them, the observatory doesn't exist, and it's true for most of the places I'm collaborating with. Also mentioning that I'm thanking a lot of people taking photos. I'm not good with a camera, so none of the pictures in this slideshow are from me. They're all from friends, and thank you all for providing me pictures. The one thing I'm talking about, I like to call and start the talk with this title, Taking the Pulse. And this is what we do. With all the projects I'm involved with, we're taking the pulse of those bird species. When you go to the doctor or when you want to know how it feels, first thing you do is you take your pulse. You want to know what am I listening to? What am I hearing? And what I like to say is that every bird species is telling a story. Of course, they're not talking to us, but by monitoring them, we can understand what they're going through. Every species has a special niche which they occupy, and they're all going to tell you a story. It's up to us to listen and see if one species is increasing, well, it means something. If it's decreasing, well, it means something else. So this is what we do with all the projects we do, is we're taking the pulse. And we do that at several places along those flyways. There exist many migratory flyways around the world, most of them related to topography, to geography. Terrestrial birds tend to avoid large body of waters. They don't want to cross water and have no place to rest or to perch. So they will try to avoid these. They also avoid climbing up hills over wide or large mountain ranges. So you get those corridors, those flyways that birds tend to follow through their migration. Obviously, there's some major ones, but they're more minor ones. One major one is actually located in Quebec. North of here, you've heard of St. Lawrence River. St. Lawrence River in close to Montreal, Quebec, is relatively narrow. Bird can cross it. As you go east, it widens and it becomes the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and it becomes a huge expanse of water that birds don't want to cross. Interestingly enough, Tadoussac is that little town sitting right at the edge of the boreal forest. It has, with a cultural and historical agriculture that happened at the site, there's a piece of land that is devoid of trees. It's a dune. It's sandy dunes. It's a cliff that goes to the water, to the St. Lawrence, and it provides a great view of the surrounding. And all these birds coming down from the boreal forest and even the Arctic tundra, coming down south, they hit the St. Lawrence River or the Gulf. They don't want to cross it, so they follow the coast through Tadoussac and all the way down closer to Quebec City where they can cross safely. So what it creates is a major flyway that connects birds from the boreal forest, the Arctic tundra, and the water birds that are attracted by the upswell in the water. There's two connecting rivers, so they're freshwater, saltwater. It creates this melting pot of habitat in a very narrow range, and then you get to see a lot of birds. So if you're into birding, you get to see those northern birds, and they're all over the place. So it's a very fantastic place to go to see birds in plumage, rare birds from south location, water birds as well, terrestrial ones, and I mean, as cute as you can be. More than 30 years ago, based on the model at Hot Mountain with the raptor migration, people in Quebec started the raptor migration count. That's 1993, sorry. And this is the kind of look you have from the dune. And this is the migratory flyway that raptor use. They follow the coast over the dunes and coming down southwest as they migrate further along the coast. What it helps you to do with the migration count that's going on every year, we get to we can picture the trend. How are the species faring? Connecting the hawkwatch together makes us able to do population trends over a continental region. And we have this international network. An example here is with the peregrine falcon, which is actually a success story for conservation. Peregrine falcon were at very low level, affected heavily by contamination in the 60s and the 70s. They bounced back since then. And now this is the count site in Tadoussac, and you see that increase. Of course, there's highs and lows every year, the variation on an annual basis, but over time, the birds have recovered quite nicely. They're still on the list for concern because the population, we're hoping the population will remain stable, but threats and pressure is still happening. So we want to keep an eye on this. But as you see, by connecting with other hawkwatches, we have the power to assess how populations are faring. This is an example of what we see in Tadoussac. So compared to a hawkwatch here, I mean, it's similar species. It's just the numbers sometimes are different. This is from about 10 days ago. I just took a snapshot from Therrien, which is the place online you could go to see live updates. This is the count for this year for raptors. And of course, I mean, you don't see a lot of black vultures. You don't see a lot of turkey vultures, but you do see a lot of goshawks, for example. If you guys are into the raptor migration community, you know goshawks are kind of one of the prize. And this is as of 10 days ago. They had 49 so far this year, which is higher than every other watch site I know. Rough-legged as well. So this is all starting right now. They're starting to get a few more these days, but this is the kind of place you can see those northern birds. Tadoussac also has banding stations, both for passerines in the morning and owl banding at night. There are several locations. They do have activities at Tadoussac itself, but other two remote sites nearby where we do monitor several species, including finches. So these are the pictures for purple finch, evening grosbeak. We're lucky. We're still having nice population, healthy, seemingly healthy population, although some of those might be at risk of a lot of pressure. So finches are on the lookout for several reasons, but Tadoussac is well suited or well located to keep track of those species. We also have other projects studying, for example, individual movement. So we're trying to connect or to analyze or assess migratory connectivity. We want to know where the birds we see at one point in the year, where do they spend their time for the rest of the year? It's very important not to just see a bird one location, but to be able to say, oh, this is very important habitat during the winter. And this is a very important habitat for stopovers during migration or breeding regions. So we use those very tiny transmitters. It's called the MODIS network right now. It allows us to put transmitters on a very small bird. Those transmitters are tiny. They weigh about 1 gram or 2. And compared to the bigger satellite transmitter that we used to put on raptors, we're still doing that on raptors, those are too big for passerine. So we're using this technology that exists now. It relies on a network of antennas that are spread across the landscape. Those are the little yellow dot you see on the picture. As you see, they're mostly located in the southern range of Quebec and Canada, but then through the US, there are several of them. As the bird migrate near one of those towers, they get recorded, and it allows us to keep track of them. The technology has allowed us, might be a little small for people in the back, but to track 10 different species and assess all sorts of different behavior. By looking at migration connectivity, we see the thrush going all the way down to Venezuela and back, and we see the other birds stopping. They go not as far as thrushes, and we see the routes they're using. Are they going towards the Great Lakes? Are they going west of the Adirondacks? Are they going east? They're going coastal. At what time of day are they moving their flight? So most passerines, migratory passerine, we think are migrating mostly at night for several reasons. Air being cooler, avoiding predators. But in some cases, we have birds migrating during the day. And this is the kind of technology that allows us to do it, to complement what we can see with our eyes when we do daily counts, visual counts. Now we have a way to assess what's going on during the whole day. One specific example we did and partnered with folks in New England looking at rusty blackbird migration connectivity. We were able to assess where do they winter, what habitat is associated with those locations, and to try to prevent those habitat from being non-existent in the future. So we know from the study and from literature and from birders and from data on eBird that rusty blackbird obviously use forested wetland or wet forest land. I don't know how to translate that, but they like those meadowish, wet forest with tree kind of habitat, which need to be preserved for rusty blackbird to thrive in the future. So these are kind of things we can tell with the MODIS technology. Shortly, Tadoussac Bird Observatory in numbers. We have a long-term ongoing scientific monitoring project being the visual count for migration, banding studies, the owl banding at night. We do a lot of scientific paper in peer-reviewed journals. We have grad students working with us. We have hundreds of volunteers annually, easily or more than that, and numerous scientific collaboration worldwide. But then the reason why you asked me to talk today was about the reverse migration, which is a typical migration that is not very common. We don't hear a lot about that term, reverse migration. A synonym in this case could be called a migration correction. So one thing we see, and we still at the process of analyzing or assessing what is going on, is we believe birds make huge corrections in migration given some conditions. The condition actually make it as it could be, as some people say, the greatest birding day of their life. This is from Ian Davies. If you're on eBird a little bit, Ian Davies is the eBird guru. Visited Tadoussac one day and went back and say, well, this is the greatest birding day of his life. It went to the New York Times, and now it's getting attention. This is a journal from UK, Birdwatch magazine. They say Migration Central happens. This is Tadoussac, for the reason I'm gonna list. And again, we were in the Birdwatchers Digest recently. The site is starting to be known. It's still not as recognized as it should be, but it's a very fantastic place. Now, what happens is during spring migration, well, birds tend to go north. They want to go to reach their breeding range. And this is, Eastern North America. As they go north, they want to do the same thing. They want to avoid a large body of water, the crossing of a large body of water. But they want to use good condition, good migration condition. They're not going to fly when the wind is facing them. They try to avoid that because it's a lot of energy to expend if you need to fight against the wind. So as the bird move north, they'll head up, they'll get to close to the coast, and then close to the St. Lawrence River, and they again want to avoid that and make that round where the river gets so wide, so they want to go around. But if the conditions are at the right time, right place, and I'm gonna list them, birds might just upshoot north and then correct the next morning. So bird migration in spring, you get three factors. If the timing is right, at the end of May, birds are in an urge to come to the breeding ground. So they're moving north. They're going to wait for favorable weather conditions. If that happens, tailwinds moving north, they're going to hop on these and get north as much as they can. Most of the time, they'll do that overnight. If the weather change in the morning, they get northwest winds. Instead of fighting through them, and they might actually go in spring, they as they move north, they'll cross the river, they'll go, if the winds are so good, they'll move north, they'll get to where the land is still covered in snow. They don't have bugs or insects to prey upon, and then they're correcting their course coming down south. So it's a very fantastic phenomenon. You're in the dune in spring, you expect all the birds to go north or northeast, but then in those corrections, you get the bird to come southwest. And by a lot of birds, the Ian Davies and the group at Tadoussac recorded over 500,000 warblers that day in Quebec. They were standing on the dune, and they say at 3 times a warbler went through their legs because they're everywhere. They say we don't need the binoculars; they're everywhere. And the guy there's a whole report. It's now called, if you're on eBird, it's called The List, because nothing has come close to that ever since. And it describes how many times I got bird through my legs, and I don't know which warbler species it was, but they're coming in the dune and in branches, they're perching, some of them are flying, big groups, and they say it's something to witness at one point in your life. So bird, if they come up, they might actually face snow cover in the ground. They're insectivorous bird. They want to come down and adjust their course. So all those conditions put together, we're trying to get a grasp of what is creating the phenomenon, but this is the kind of thing that you see. So lots of bird moving through, birds in spring in breeding plumage, and I mean, you get to see a lot of cool looking birds. All of that like in very close range. Not here, no, yeah, you're good. And so there was a show in Quebec, and I don't think the link works for this today, but if you are interested in seeing what it looks like, I'm happy to share the link later, and if your club wants to share the link. It's a show, they recorded it, not the day of 500,000, but they had a good day, so it's you can still see. It's in French, but it got dub, or you can hear it in English. So if you're interested in looking at the video, it shows what the scene looks like. This is the eBird list from Ian that day, and he said, well, today was the greatest birding day of my life. And look at those numbers: 72,000 Tennessee warblers, 50,000 American redstarts, 100,000 Cape May warblers. I mean, numbers you never see any other places. And the numbers keep going. Magnolia, bay-breasted. Yeah, it's almost overwhelming. So right now, since the phenomenon is been recently known, this is not something that's been in textbooks much. We're trying to develop a method for counting these birds. So those are approximation. As you read through the description, they're conservative description. We need to find ways, just like people studying raptors in the past came with a protocol to do that. Now we're looking at options. Right now it consists of birders being back to back, looking at everything they see in a minute, and then extrapolating the species composition for the 9 next minute, and then doing it again. So every 10 minutes, you got to refresh. What is the composition of bird? What are the species we're seeing? But there's a lot of unknowns because the birds might be flying too fast, too far away. But those are the ones being identifiable from the outlook, the lookout. And again, bird picture, it's easy, right? They're right, all over the place in the sand dunes. And that one, I don't know if you had that one, big-nose thrush. On the right side. All right. And then I'm just gonna skip and talk about other projects, but I'm happy to answer any question later on. Other things we do, and again, this is all collaborative work. I mean, none of this is a one-man show. None of this is only one site. It's always a combination of strength. Project AllNet is a good example of this. Banding stations for mostly saw-whet owl. The one good thing about Tadoussac, by being so up north, we have the boreal owl as well, that we are one of the few stations in North America to monitor boreal owl populations. So by setting up nets at night, banding owls, we are able to assess population trend again. So the graph is a little crowded with two lines, and there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of variation. One year you got a lot of species. In several years in a row, you might have very few. But you see those high and lows. One species is doing better than the other. The saw-whet owl is on the slightly rise or maybe stable population overall. Whereas the boreal owl, we see those peak in abundance, but I'll get a clearer, precise data graph. You'll see that it's slightly decreasing over time. This is from 7 sites across the eastern North America for saw-whet owls, and we see that there's not much trend in the data, which is a good thing. There's stable population over a wide region for this owl. One thing we're seeing, though, is a slight delay in migration. We're assessing phenological changes in timing. Are the birds passing at the same date in average every year? And we see that, again, there's a lot of noise in the data, but there's a slight delay in time of passage for those birds. This is one of the things we linked with potentially a cause from climate change. So the climate, if the environment is getting warmer, birds are not pressed to depart as early as before. So you see that adjustment in timing of migration. So it's a slight delay. Over time, I mean, over 10 years, it's about 1 day in average. So it's not much, but it's still happening. What is most cause of concern is the trend in, for example, boreal owl. So these peaks in abundance, boreal owl being a species associated with the eruptive nature. So they eat a lot of voles in the boreal forest. Voles, like other small mammals, show those huge variation in abundance from one year to the next. And boreal owl feed heavily on them. So when you have a lot of food, lots of boreal owl producing lots of baby boreal owl. When you don't have that much, well, you don't have those big peaks. So this is one of the things we see. Those peaks are fading out or spacing, so they're not as clear as they used to be. There's a lot happening in the boreal forest. Changes. There's fire regimes, their exploitation, their climate change. So all of this put together right now, this is a very recent paper published in 2025. We're just saying there might be something going on with boreal owl. We just want to make it on the lookout that we pay attention to this species. We hear a lot about several threats ecosystem are facing. This is a picture taken from an helicopter looking at the boreal forest, and you see there's a lot of gray trees that seem kind of without their typical greenness. Those are trees that have been attacked by this, in English, this spruce budworm. It's an epidemic small insect that becomes a butterfly. It attacks coniferous trees, not only spruce, but balsam fir. It could cause wide damage. It could cause slightly less damage. And of course, all the time we hear about it. I mean, it's not a good news because it's affecting the landscape and the forest itself. And obviously, I mean, they don't look that interesting when you look at close up at the bug like that. But for the birds, I don't know if you see what they're eating, but they love them. So if something looks like it's a bad news for the ecosystem, well, these guys, I mean, you can tell, but they're smiling. They're happy. And what we've seen, and we're still trying to make analysis about that, but we want to link population trend in those warbler species with the epidemic of spruce budworms. Right now, the hypothesis, and we haven't tested yet, but the hypothesis is that in the fall, following a large epidemic, we should see lots of young ones of those species. So the adults should be there as well, surviving well, but we should see a ratio of young ones that's higher during those years. So these are the things that we're studying right now, trying to make those connections. We hear a lot about climate change. I just talked about it. And climate change, well, it affects distribution. Where do species live in the landscape? It affects their abundance. How do they reproduce? How do they survive? And it affects their phenology. When in the year those birds are doing whatever they do, migrating, breeding, and so on. So we're studying all of this. The one thing, though, compared to any pressure that you can measure in an ecosystem, being contamination or forest fire or an epidemic, it's a very holistic and broad and complex thing. So climate change is affecting the whole ecosystem from very bottom of whatever it is in the ecosystem. It affects plant growth, insects. But of course, if you increase temperature by a few degrees, it's not the temperature itself that might kill the birds, but it's the change in food supply, the change in the rain regime, or it's intrinsic and holistic complex. So it's not as easy as just saying, well, this causes that. So we're in the lookout trying to make those links. And one of the things we see, for example, is a change in phenology. And this is in raptors in North America. We studied raptor migration in North America over 30 years for this paper, several sites, and looking at compared to, and the left side of the graph is spring, and the right side of the graph is fall migration. So there's a line going down in each one of them, which is the average for all these species. And we're looking if nowadays they're going later than before, or they're going earlier than before for their migration. So it's a heavy graph, but for each one of those species, the black dot indicate a significant change, either being earlier or later, and the white squares are no significant difference. So we see that a lot of species, at least in spring, are advancing their passage. They come in earlier than they used to come. So that's a change we're measuring in raptors. Lots of raptors coming earlier to their breeding grounds. In the fall, all of those significant dots, the black ones, are to the right of it. So they come in later. They're passing later during migration. It doesn't seem to be that much at both ends. So it's a few days every year that the birds are coming earlier, and a few days that they're coming later. But when you add it up, it changed something in the ecosystem, because you have those species, top predators, spending more time than before in the same ecosystem. So this is the kind of thing that's happening. It's very, it might look trivial, but it's the kind of thing, it kind of changes we see right now. Change in the timing of events. And of course, if you have those species, those top predators being present or not, well, it changed a lot for the prey species that are either facing the predators or not. So obviously, these are the kind of thing that have cascading effect through the food web. And we're studying this as of now. New recent fire, I mean, a couple of years ago, it was pretty dire up in Quebec. We had large wildfires, and elsewhere in Canada, I mean, smoke came all the way here. And of course, forest fires have happened in the past, and we've kind of reduced them by controlling forest fires, and now sometimes they go uncontrolled, and we're wondering, how is that affecting species? Of course, if you're a warbler trying to go and nest and this happens, well, it's not going to help. So obviously, we expect some species to be negatively affected, but we're very interested in seeing how in the long term, how is that going to translate in the long term? Some species might actually benefit from the new regrowth that happens after a forest fire. So these are the kind of things that we can do by monitoring birds over time, over a long time. Same scientific protocol, standardized way, you can assess what is causing what. Now, obviously, those pictures might be looking grim, but I'm a positive person. I think the future is promising. This is a conference we had, we were just talking about it. That was an owl conference in Portugal. Everyone coming from all over the world to share what they're seeing, what they're studying. But these kind of conferences happen all the time around the globe, and we're trying to find ways to assess what's going on in the ecosystem, what is causing species to decline, what is helping other species to thrive. One such example is the rebound of bald eagles. Bald eagles is a huge success story that we should applaud ourselves. We should say we should base our stuff on stories like that. Bald eagles were a very, very low level, but we put the effort and we recovered. The bald eagles now are becoming so common. They used to be rare in Pennsylvania alone. There used to be, I think it went down to 4 nests across Pennsylvania 30 years ago. And now there's over 400 of them known. Every year people are saying, well, we got a new nest here. And the record for migrating bald eagles at Hawk Mountain, we seem to beat it every year now. So again, last year we beat the record again. So nice success story. When we put the resources together, we put our brains together, we put the resources in the right places, and we can do it. So I'm very positive. I'm positive as well because we have bright new generation wanting to make a change, wanting to study these birds and assess what is going on. So we have grad students, postdoc researchers working with us on several questions, several species. And I'll just wrap it up here and open it up for question. I have a few nice pictures to say, well, if you want to visit either Hawk Mountain or Tadoussac, let me know. Feel free to contact me personally, and I can put you in touch with people that could help you, or if you want to lead a trip, if you need a guide, if you're looking to go, contact us. We're happy to host. Tadoussac obviously is very charming. It's a tourist town in the summertime, but in the fall, if you come for bird, it's a very nice time. We have, well, the website, if you want to learn more, obviously there's that newsletter that you can register, and the support button, obviously. If you're interested, the festival, the bird festival, the whole thing, the advertisement is in French because this is the easiest one I had, but obviously everything's in English. There's English guides. They'll of course have an accent, but you'll find it charming. I'm assuring you. It's an awesome week of birding. Obviously September is very interesting for bird diversity and activities, and the weather is super nice. It's literally, 23 to 24-hour birding. It just keeps on going. There's a songbirds in the morning, the raptor count, the pelagic tours, the owl banding at night that goes all the way almost to sunrise. So it just keeps on going. There's something for everyone. The festival is a good time when we connect with people. We have the banding station. We can show birds to people that typically don't see birds. So people are flocking to these events, and look at the smile. They're all kind of happy to see our biologists, our banders working and presenting the birds. There's not much else that's as powerful as to connect people with nature, with the birds, when you see them firsthand. And another example is my colleague, Lauriane, presenting a bird to a 4-year-old kid. These people remember the importance to preserve the ecosystem, the fragile but resilient nature of those species. So these are the kind of times you want to be there, you want to participate in this. So obviously you're all welcome to either of those places. We have this sponsoring thing. If you want to adopt a sourdough owl, it's possible to do so in person or online as well. And I have a couple of videos. We can play it after during the questions, but other than that, it's just nice pictures of the place. So happy to answer any question. Hope you enjoyed.
If you have a question, raise your hand and I will bring the microphone to you so the audience can hear it online. Questions?
Can you describe the raptor migration path that goes past your site, does it follow the Appalachian Mountains, for example, to come down south?
From Hawk Mountain, Pennsylvania, or from
No, no,
Tadoussac?
no,
Yeah,
up
so
and go
it
back.
follows the coast. So up in Tadoussac, birds are coming down from the boreal forest. They hit the St. Lawrence and they follow the coast. So as you're standing in the dune, they come in right overhead. You're right by the sandy cliff, and then they mostly pass within 100 yards of the coast. So it's great views. I was just talking about, I was there in September and they had what the local goshawks, again, they're flying around. And so these are kind of birds you see that you're not typically seeing further down south, but you got great passage of golden eagles, lots of sharp-shinned hawk this year. It was a record year for sharp-shinned hawk at Tadoussac. So it's a great place to go for raptors for sure. Does that answer?
Yeah. And then
And they keep going southwest.
Are they
Yeah.
sort of following the Appalachians, which it ultimately does?
Yeah, they're gonna
Can you-
use
I'm-
those updrafts created by the Appalachians. But where we are in Tadoussac, they're mostly following the coast because they don't want to be crossing the large expanse of water.
Ellen Welby is asking, according to Wikipedia, the population of Tadoussac is 814. I imagine there is not a lot of infrastructure for visiting birders like hotels, food, etc. And I imagine there's growing interest in birders spending a few spring days in the area. Are there places to stay like nearby towns, or is it camping only? Great talk. Thank you very much.
Sure. No, it's a great question. Tadoussac is a small town of year-round resident, but it's a touristy place. It gets very active from June to August, which is good time to be there. Bird migration kicks in September when the crowds are kind of moving away. So lots of birders go in. There's a lot of infrastructure, all sorts of Airbnbs, big hotel, which is not a big commercial one, but a very nice location with plenty of room. So there are options, several options, yes, for sure.
Okay. Douglas Fatuma asks, in the figure showing change in the timing of spring and fall migration, what are the units of change? I think it was percentage, but what does that mean? How many days?
Good, very good question. Sorry, I didn't go into the details. The picture showed bird coming earlier in the spring and moving mostly later in the fall. The number of days is not like impressive. It's up to 1 to 2 days every 10 years. So it's not like they're changing completely. It's not like they're going to change their ecology completely and being able to have a double clutch of and breed a double to have breeding success, double the breeding success. It just changes and it keeps on changing. So if the trend continues, these species are going to spend some more time up on the breeding ground. So it's about, we're talking 1 to 2 days every decade.
And Eve Oppenheim asks, can you see beluga whales in the fall at Tadoussac?
Yes, very likely. There's a lot of whale watching. I didn't present about whale watching because I'm mostly studying birds, but it's a great place for whale watching. There's a nice little ferry. If you go driving from Quebec City, you need to go on the ferry, which is free. You just get on the ferry and cross. It's not a mile wide. It might be a little more than a mile, but it's very short ferry ride. And I'm not joking. 1 out of 2 times I'm seeing beluga whales from the ferry. So you just up on your car and then you go on the dock and then the beluga whale. So they're very relatively common to see.
Lorianne, who came with him today, said that she saw her first blue whale there recently. And I'm sorry, I have to add, when I went there as a tourist before I was a birder, there's an observatory for looking at the belugas from a cliff up above the town, and you can see them in the water below there.
Yeah, from the coast. Yeah.
So, and yeah, it's an incredible addition to bird watching there.
So the reverse migration, you've done this vast quantities of birds. They're just, these the scientists were very skilled, obviously, to make their estimates. And I'm just wondering if you can elaborate how, when you're confronted with that quantity of migration and they're developing methods to try to count this, how does that actually work?
Yeah, very good question. This is when faced with a new, it's not a problem, but a new challenge, we need to design a way to take into account what's going on. So right now, as I was saying, we're discussing the best ways to assess the numbers. We know there's a lot of uncertainty that you cannot identify every single bird. There's so many. So we need to come with ways to assess what's going on. And I'll circle back to the raptor migration. When you do a raptor count on a site, for those of you familiar with it, we're counting all the raptors that are coming. And obviously everyone asks, well, how can you tell you're not counting the same bird twice? And of course, you're trying not to do it. You try to see them as they come through a flyway, a pattern, flight pattern. They're coming in one direction, and you count them as they pass through. But it's not impossible that some of them circle and come back. The thing is, you're doing the same thing the same way. It's a standardized, it's not an absolute count. It's the standardized monitoring protocol. You can, if you do the same thing every year, every day of the year, of every year the same way, you can compare to what has been done the same way 10 years ago, 30 years ago. So right now, with this new, it's recently discovered that reverse migration, that big correction. So we're trying to find a way that we can do it in a way that will be able to be comparable moving forward. So right now, we're feeling confident with the observation minute that we extrapolate. But again, it could be refined in the future, but we're working on it.
I have a problem with this. I speak. Reverse migration. I'm sorry. This is so that the people on Zoom.
I
do.
see.
Okay.
I can repeat it.
I'm just wondering. What are you going to do?
A bird song in the spring, and we're counting all the species for gaining money to run our programs. If we're speaking of them being installed, is that really a reverse migration taking place?
So bird will it's kind of echoing now. Okay. Sorry, I got the feedback coming from the microphone somewhere. Bird will tend to reduce energy expenditure during migration. It's a tough time. Migration is tough for birds. They're very vulnerable. They're not in the familiar places, and they don't want to fight against conditions. So sometimes, if weather is not cooperating, they're just going to stay put. They're not going to fight through it. The reverse migration we're seeing is when condition finally improves, they take advantage of it, and they even go offshoot and go further than they expected or wanted to go. But the condition was so good, they keep going. Then in the morning, they realize, well, okay, it's snowy here. There's no warm, there's nothing, and they need to correct and get back on track. It happens in any species. If condition is so good, they might just keep going and hope it's gonna work out. But yeah, they're gonna benefit from good conditions. So when conditions are very bad, they might just stay put. And sometimes this is what creates those big movement, is when conditions were bad for several days, so bird didn't go. So it's not a trickle of bird. It's just they were all stay and kept from migrating. And now when it finally improves, all of them just go and just unleashes the whole thing. We see the same with raptors. I'm sure water birds might do similarly, although I don't know the migration in water birds as much. But yeah, so it's just benefiting from good condition to get going, and then, okay, well, what we need to correct and adjust. There's a question.
Yeah. Giving a lot of
Oh, that's okay. But I can repeat the question if needed.
Dr. Therrien can repeat the question for the Zoom audience.
Okay. The electronic tags or transponders, can they ID individuals so you can say, oh, this fellow passed by here yesterday?
Yes, it's individually tagged, so we know which bird is where when it pins. There are several technologies, several ways or methods to do it. The old school one is backpack transmitters that connect to satellites. It needs to be very powerful with a big antenna, and we were only able to use it until now on bigger birds. Now those tiny transmitters, they connect with those towers in the landscape, and they all have an individual coded burst of signal. So it's similar to listening to the radio in your car when you tune in, but then every bird has its own burst signal. So you can tell that bird was banded that day, it passed here that day, and so on. Is that what your question? Yeah. So we can get very precise. It's to the individual, which revolutionize how we do science, because it's not just on a population level. We track individual and we know where they are.
Could the phenomenon that you're seeing with reverse migration be connected to climate change? For example, if the birds are leaving earlier now because of climate change, they get up there and they have great conditions. Coincidentally, they're getting up their way earlier than they ordinarily would have in the past.
It's a good point. This is something to consider. My first impression, though, is it might not be linked that strongly with climate change, just because it seems to be happening when conditions are all in place, which are conditions that can be like normal conditions, like bad weather in May, bird wanting to go north, and then there's still snow on the ground, and then overnight, the wind comes from the northwest suddenly. So right now, my first impression is it might not be tightly linked with climate change, but it seems like we're just making some. We're starting to understand the behavior. It hasn't been described that much in the past. We have people studying the exact condition that happens, but we're trying to put to get a framework of what's going on when that happens. Tadoussac might not be the only one place in the world that those corrections happen. It just seems to be happening through a lot of birds in given days in a way that this doesn't seem to be happening a lot, but there's a lot of migration correction probably happening we're just not aware of. Yep.
Do you think with the mass migration numbers, do you think there's like AI technology with either video capture or audio that might help with the identification process at
Yeah,
some
good
point?
point. If any of you is very savvy into technology, but I know people have worked on species recognition just by flight pattern, and it has been discussed with raptors. Can we replace someone counting the birds by a camera facing the sky, seeing those silhouettes coming in? We're not there yet, but if it can be done with some species, I don't see why it wouldn't be possible for smaller ones. But it needs to be super precise, because those tiny things are moving fast and they're tiny. So, but there's, I'm not saying no. Yeah.
And I actually have two questions. So I'm Canadian. I remember from my childhood, there would be on the news there was this terrible spruce budworm outbreak in Nova Scotia, and it was wreaking havoc on the logging industry. So is this a thing that's actually getting worse and is actually imperiling forests now with climate change? Or is it a more waxing and waning norm over time?
I don't want to be, speaking in behalf of stuff that I don't know, but from what I know, this is a natural phenomenon. It's been happening. Obviously, it's not. If you're a forester, you're logging. It's probably not good. And I mean, I need to acknowledge that we need the resources for building houses and and stuff. So there's ways to limit an epidemic from becoming, I mean, out of control. And this seems to be, I mean, there's ways to limit that, and that would not affect the bird species too much. But we're seeing that natural phenomenon, when it happens, species benefiting from it probably are benefiting, I mean, heavily from it.
Sorry. My second question is a touristic one, because you mentioned earlier in the day that although the reverse migration and the absolute rivers of warblers may unpredictably occur in the springtime, that as a tourist, it may be better to go in fall in terms of having a more reliable zillions of warblers experience.
Exactly. So yes, for the hardcore birder, reverse migration and rivers of warbler is something not to miss, but it's depending on various conditions to be exactly in line to make that happen. And May can be a time when, I mean, weather is still unsure on the short northern Quebec. The fall migration is more reliable in bird species diversity. Weather-wise, it's a very good time to be on Tadoussac. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. You had spoken about just how you were tracking these birds sort of by radio telemetry or satellite. Are you able to get live pings on it? So for instance, like Shark Watch, I think it is, or there's one of the sites that tracks great white sharks off the coast, the east coast of the Americas. Are you able to get sort of that live data, or does it just pour into a spreadsheet somewhere and you look at it later? Just curious. And then you did talk about that one interesting ping in New York. I don't know if you want to share it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, two things here. We do have a way to get those updates, either from the bigger birds. Sometimes those transmitters transmit their data through cell phone towers, the network of cell phone towers. So you're actually getting a text message from a snowy owl or from an eagle, no kidding. And then you get boom, 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 I was here like just now. And so this is very exciting. We do have, for snowy owls, a website we call Project Snowstorm, where they're updated. They're not live just because we don't want to get too many people going to, because we would just tell them where the owls are. Some places it had attracted a lot of photographers, people feeding them, and we want to try to avoid this. But you can keep track of those birds where they go by just looking at it. So it's refreshed, and then you see where they go. The example we were talking about is a bird, a snowy owls, one snowy that was on the Delaware region. It flew to New York City, spent 6 hours atop a big skyscraper. I don't know which one it was. Overnight, and then before the sun rose, it just head out of the city. But it spent 6 hours atop one of the buildings, like right here in Manhattan somewhere. So interesting thing that we see. Like it's as I said, I could talk about these kind of things, all different flight pattern, but individual behaviors that we've had. Yeah, it's very, very exciting. People, I'm one of them, but we go online to get refresh on where our birds are, and it gets addictive. You want to look again, well, where are they? Where are they now? So yeah, we do that. So we need to pace ourselves, but it's very addictive.
Is there a public thing part of that, or is that all just for scientists?
The one like Project Snowstorm is public. You can get to see the one birds. They all have names, so you can track the bird that was banded near where you're at, or one bird that you get connected somehow, or you can see all of them together at the same time and see exactly where they were at what date. And there are other projects that exist as well. We have a Hawk Mountain, a project on broad-winged hawks that you can keep track of where they're going as well. So there's some initiative like that. It's not all of the birds, all the tracking that is public, but some of them are. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for sharing this delightful evening with us. It's both really fascinating and also really exciting and inspiring. And I expect a lot of us are plotting now about how we're going to get to Tadoussac. By the way, if you go in the fall, it is an absolutely gorgeous drive with fall colors from Quebec City. So
Thank you so much.